Christian. Fear followed me so hard that I fled the next way and fell in. Help. Then said he, Give me thine hand. So he gave him his hand, and he drew him out. Psalm 42. And he set him upon sound ground, and bid him go on his way. Then I stepped to him that plucked him out, and said, Sir, wherefore, since over this place is the way from the city of destruction to yonder gate, is it, that this plat is not mended, that poor travellers might go thither with more security? And he said unto me, This miry slough is such a place as cannot be mended. It is the descent whither the scum and filth that attends conviction for sin doth continually run, and therefore it is called the slough of despond. For still, as the sinner is awakened about his lost condition, there arise in his soul many fears and doubts, and discouraging apprehensions, which all of them get together, and settle in this place. And this is the reason of the badness in this ground. It is not the pleasure of the king that this place should remain so bad. Isaiah 35:3-4. His labourers also have, by the direction of his Majesty's surveyors, been for above this 1600 years employed about this patch of ground, if perhaps it might have been mended. Yea, and to my knowledge, said he, there have been swallowed up at least 20,000 cartloads, yea, millions of wholesome instructions that have at all seasons been brought from all places of the king's dominions. And they that can tell say they are the best materials to make good ground of the place. If so be it might have been mended, but it is the slough of despond still, and so will be when they have done what they can. True, there are, by the direction of the lawgiver, certain good and substantial steps, placed even through the very midst of this slough, but at such time as this place doth much spew out its filth, as it doth against change of weather, these steps are hardly seen, or if they be, men through the dizziness of their heads step beside, and then they are bemired to purpose, notwithstanding the steps be there, but the ground is good when they are once got in at the gate. 1 Samuel 12:23. Now I saw in my dream that by this time Pliable was got home to his house. So his neighbours came to visit him, and some of them called him wise man for coming back, and some called him fool for hazarding himself with Christian. Others again did mock at his cowardliness, saying, Surely, since you began to venture, I would not have been so base as to have given out for a few difficulties. So Pliable sat sneaking among them, but at last he got more confidence, and then they all turned their tails, and began to deride poor Christian behind his back, and thus much concerning Pliable. Now as Christian was walking solitarily by himself, he espied one afar off come crossing over the field to meet him, and their hap was to meet just as they were crossing the way of each other. The gentleman's name that met him was Mr. Worldly Wiseman. He dwelt in the town of Carnal Policy, a very great town, and also hard by from whence Christian came. This man then, meeting with Christian, and having some inkling of him, for Christian setting forth from the city of destruction was much noised about, not only in the town where he dwelt, but also it began to be the town talk in some other places. Mr. Worldly Wiseman, therefore, having some guess of him, by beholding his laborious going, by observing his sighs and groans and the like, began thus to enter into some talk with Christian. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. How now, good fellow, whither away after this burdened manner? Christian. A burdened manner indeed, as ever I think poor creature had, and whereas you ask me whither away, I tell you, sir, I am going to yonder wicket gate before me, for there, as I am informed, I shall be put into a way to be rid of my heavy burden. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Hast thou a wife and children? Christian. Yes, but I am so laden with this burden that I cannot take that pleasure in them as formerly. Methinks I am as if I had none. 1 Corinthians 7:29. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Wilt thou hearken to me if I give thee counsel? Christian. If it be good, I will, for I stand in need of good counsel. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. I would advise thee then, that thou with all speed get thyself rid of thy burden, for thou wilt never be settled in thy mind till then, nor canst thou enjoy the benefits of the blessings which God hath bestowed upon thee till then. Christian. That is that which I seek for, even to be rid of this heavy burden. But get it off myself I cannot, nor is there any man in our country that can take it off my shoulders. Therefore am I going this way, as I told you, that I may be rid of my burden. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Who bid thee go this way to be rid of thy burden? Christian. A man that appeared to me to be a very great and honourable person. His name, as I remember, is Evangelist. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. I beshrew him for his counsel. There is not a more dangerous and troublesome way in the world than is that into which he hath directed thee, and that thou shalt find if thou wilt be ruled by his counsel. Thou hast met with something, as I perceive already, for I see the dirt of the slough of despond is upon thee. But that slough is the beginning of the sorrows that do attend those that go on in that way. Hear me, I am older than thou. Thou art like to meet with, in the way which thou goest, wearisomeness, painfulness, hunger, perils, nakedness, sword, lions, dragons, darkness, and in a word, death and what not. These things are certainly true, having been confirmed by many testimonies. And should a man so carelessly cast away himself by giving heed to a stranger? Christian. Why, sir, this burden on my back is more terrible to me than are all these things which you have mentioned. Nay, methinks I care not what I meet with in the way, if so be I can also meet with deliverance from my burden. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. How camest thou by thy burden at first? Christian. By reading this book in my hand. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. I thought so, and it has happened unto thee as to other weak men, who, meddling with things too high for them, do suddenly fall into thy distractions, which distractions do not only unman men, as thine I perceive have done thee, but they run them upon desperate ventures to obtain they know not what. Christian. I know what I would obtain. It is ease from my heavy burden. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. But why wilt thou seek for ease this way, seeing so many dangers attend it? Especially since, hadst thou but patience to hear me, I could direct thee to the obtaining of what thou desirest, without the dangers that thou in this way wilt run thyself into. Yea, and the remedy is at hand. Besides, I will add, that instead of those dangers thou shalt meet with safety, friendship, and content. Christian. Sir, I pray, open this secret to me. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Why, in yonder village, the village is named Morality, there dwells a gentleman whose name is Legality, a very judicious man, and a man of a very good name, that has skill to help men off with such burdens as thine is from their shoulders. Yea, to my knowledge he hath done a great deal of good this way. Ay, and besides he hath skill to cure those that are somewhat crazed in their wits with their burdens. To him, as I said, thou mayest go and be helped presently. His house is not quite a mile from this place, and if he should not be at home himself, he hath a pretty young man to his son, whose name is Civility, that can do it to speak on, as well as the old gentleman himself. There, I say, thou mayest be eased of thy burden, if thou art not minded to go back to thy former habitation, as indeed I would not wish thee. Thou mayest send for thy wife and children to this village, where there are houses now standing empty, one of which thou mayest have at a reasonable rate. Provision is there also cheap and good, and that which will make thy life the more happy is, to be sure, there thou shalt live by honest neighbours in credit and good fashion. Now was Christian somewhat at a stand, but presently he concluded, If this be true, which this gentleman hath said, my wisest course is to take his advice. And with that he thus further spake. Christian. Sir, which is my way to this honest man's house? Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Do you see yonder high hill? Christian. Yes, very well. Mr. Worldly Wiseman. By that hill you must go, and the first house you come at is his. So Christian turned out of his way to go to Mr. Legality's house for help. But behold, when he was got now hard by the hill, it seemed so high, and also that side of it that was next the wayside did hang so much over, that Christian was afraid to venture further, lest the hill should fall on his head. Wherefore there he stood still, and wotted not what to do. Also his burden now seemed heavier to him than while he was in his way. There came also flashes of fire, Exodus 19:16 and 18, out of the hill, that made Christian afraid that he should be burnt. Here therefore he did sweat and quake for fear, Hebrews 12:21. And now he began to be sorry that he had taken Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel, and with that he saw Evangelist coming to meet him, at the sight also of whom he began to blush for shame. So Evangelist drew nearer and nearer, and coming up to him, he looked upon him with a severe and dreadful countenance, and thus began to reason with Christian. Evangelist, what doest thou here, Christian? Said he, at which words Christian knew not what to answer, wherefore at present he stood speechless before him. Then said Evangelist, Father, art not thou the man that I found crying without the walls of the city of destruction? Christian, yes, dear sir, I am the man. Evangelist, did not I direct thee the way to the little wicket gate? Christian, yes, dear sir, said Christian. Evangelist, how is it then that thou art so quickly turned aside, for thou art now out of the way? Christian, I met with a gentleman so soon as I had got over the slough of despond, who persuaded me that I might, in the village before me, find a man that could take off my burden. Evangelist, what was he? Christian, he looked like a gentleman, and talked much to me, and got me at last to yield, so I came hither. But when I beheld this hill, and how it hangs over the way, I suddenly made a stand, lest it should fall on my head. Evangelist, what said that gentleman to you? Christian, why, he asked me whither I was going, and I told him. Evangelist, and what said he then? Christian, he asked me if I had a family, and I told him. But, said I am so laden with the burden that is on my back, that I cannot take pleasure in them as formerly. Evangelist, and what said he then? Christian, he bid me with speed get rid of my burden. I told him it was ease that I sought. And, said I am therefore going to yonder gate to receive farther direction how I may get to the place of deliverance. So he said that he would show me a better way, and short, not so attended with difficulties as the way, sir, that you set me in. Which way, said he, will direct you to a gentleman's house, that hath skill to take off these burdens. So I believed him, and turned out of that way into this, if haply I might be soon eased of my burden. But when I came to this place, and beheld things as they are, I stopped, for fears, I said, of danger. But I now know not what to do. Evangelist, then, said Evangelist, stand still a little, that I show thee the words of God. So he stood trembling. Then said Evangelist, see that ye refuse not him that speaketh. For if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. Hebrews 12:25. He said moreover, now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. Hebrews 10:38. He also did thus apply them, thou art the man that art running into this misery. Thou hast begun to reject the counsel of the Most High, and to draw back thy foot from the way of peace, even almost to the hazarding of thy perdition. Then Christian fell down at his feet as dead, crying, Woe is to me, for I am undone. At the sight of which Evangelist caught him by the right hand, saying, All manner of sin and blasphemies shall be forgiven unto men. Matthew 12:31. Be not faithless, but believing. John 20:27. Then did Christian again a little revive, and stood up trembling as at first before Evangelist. Then Evangelist proceeded, saying, Give more earnest heed to the things that I shall tell thee of. I will now show thee who it was that deluded thee, and who it was also to whom he sent thee. The man that met thee is one worldly wise man, and rightly is he so called, partly because he savoureth only the doctrine of this world. 1 John 4:5. Therefore he always goes to the town of morality to church, and partly because he loveth that doctrine best, for it saveth him best from the cross. Galatians 6:12. And because he is of this carnal temper, therefore he seeketh to pervert my ways, though right. Now there are 3 things in this man's counsel that thou must utterly abhor. 1. His turning thee out of the way. 2. His labouring to render the cross odious to thee. 3. And his setting thy feet in that way that leadeth unto the administration of death. First, thou must abhor his turning thee out of the way, yea, and thine own consenting thereto, because this is to reject the counsel of God for the sake of the counsel of a worldly wise man. The Lord says, Strive to enter in at the strait gate, Luke 13:24, the gate to which I send thee, for strait is the gate that leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Matthew 7:13.